Imagine a world frozen in time-vast glaciers, stretching across continents, winds howling through desolate valleys, and survival hanging by a thread. In this unforgiving Ice Age wilderness, strength alone wasn't enough. It took instinct, intelligence, community. And in that world, walking side by side with our ancestors, lived another kind of human, the Neanderthal. They weren't monsters. They weren't myths. They were real flesh and blood, with families to protect, fires to tend, and fears we still recognize today. They hunted, they built, they mourned. They thrived for over 300,000 years. So what were Neanderthals really like? Were they truly so different or more like us than we ever imagined? Today, on Prehistoric Shadows, we uncover the forgotten legacy of Neanderthal life, their astonishing physical power, their sudden and still mysterious extinction, and the DNA secrets they left buried within our bodies. This is their story and, in part, ours too. The Neanderthals were not a failed experiment of evolution. They were not some primitive detour on humanity's march toward modernity. They were, in every meaningful way, human. A distinct branch of the Homo genus, yes, but fully capable of thought, expression, emotion, and innovation. For over 300,000 years, Neanderthals thrived across vast territories stretching from the British Isles to the Middle East and into the frigid steppes of Siberia. They adapted to bitter cold, hunted some of the most dangerous animals on Earth, and formed tight-knit communities built on cooperation, survival, and care. These weren't isolated cave dwellers hiding from extinction. They were a dominant population of prehistoric human species, living in complex social groups, raising children, and passing down knowledge through generations. Long before Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, it was Neanderthals who roamed the forests and valleys, masters of their world, not shadows within it. Their story begins in the Ice Age, amid mammoths, saber-toothed cats, woolly rhinoceroses, and towering glaciers. But while their world may seem alien, their lives were deeply human. They gathered around fire-lit caves, made intricate tools from flint and bone, and possibly used plant-based medicines. They even crafted simple jewelry from eagle talons and decorated themselves with pigments. These were not the behaviors of brutes, but of beings with imagination and identity. This was real Neanderthal life, a daily rhythm of cooperation and survival, of hunting and healing, of building family ties under the cold watch of an uncaring sky. Their bodies were shaped by their environment. Broad rib cages, robust limbs, strong hands built for enduring the extremes. With barrel chests, prominent brow ridges, and powerful builds, their appearance was undeniably different. But difference is not deficiency. In fact, what set them apart may have been what made them exceptional. And yet, while their physical presence dominates the fossil record, their minds remain elusive. Did they speak as we do? Did they dream in metaphor, in myth? Did they imagine gods, stars, or the future? We may never fully know, but what we do know is that their cognitive abilities were far more advanced than once believed. They made strategic tools. They planned coordinated hunts. They mourned their dead. They may have told stories around fires that no longer burn. Their world, frozen, dangerous, and beautiful, was one of the most profoundly human environments ever shaped by evolution. And yet, much of their legacy remains buried under millennia of snow, soil, and misunderstanding. The Neanderthals were not an evolutionary footnote. They were ancient humans, full of complexity and wonder. And it's time we finally told their story with the dignity they deserve. When we speak of Neanderthals, one trait rises above all others: their extraordinary strength. Not mythical, not exaggerated, but scientifically measurable, preserved in bones that defy comparison. Their skeletons tell a story written in density and durability: wide rib cages, short but incredibly thick femurs, broad shoulders, and heavily muscled forearms. Compared to modern humans, Their bones were not just larger, but built for raw power. They were forged for a world of ice, stone, and survival. Neanderthals didn't just endure the Ice Age, they confronted it head-on. Their day-to-day lives were filled with peril. They hunted 10-foot-tall mammoths and armored woolly rhinoceros creatures so dangerous they would terrify even the most trained modern soldier. These were not theoretical challenges. They were real, daily battles that demanded superhuman strength, agility, and resilience. Their survival wasn't optional, it was earned every single day through force and precision. Some paleoanthropologists suggest that a Neanderthal male could match or exceed the physical performance of modern elite athletes, not through training but through evolution. Their environment shaped them. Every movement, every hunt, every lift of a boulder or spear pull was a necessity encoded into their biology. But this strength came at a cost. Muscle burns energy. A Neanderthal's powerful body required a tremendous caloric intake to maintain. While Homo sapiens were developing leaner frames and more efficient metabolic strategies, Neanderthals remained locked in a physical form optimized for brute endurance in extreme cold. In stable environments, this adaptation worked. But as Ice Age climates began to fluctuate more unpredictably, food sources dwindled. Hunting grew riskier. Long winters became starvation seasons. Their strength once their greatest weapon became a burden. Evolution had prepared them for a specific kind of world, but the world was changing, and it would not wait. There's a tragic irony in this. The very trait that allowed Neanderthals to dominate Europe for over 300,000 years may have also hastened their fall. Their muscular frames, once symbols of survival, became unsustainable liabilities in a planet shifting beneath their feet. Yet, their legacy remains. Traces of their physical resilience and muscular genes still linger in our DNA. Traits tied to metabolism, immune response, and even our own athletic potential. In many ways, Neanderthals weren't relics of a brutal past. They were champions of adaptation built for a world no longer here. And in the silent language of fossils, they still speak of what strength truly meant in a time when strength was life. They vanished from the fossil record, but they didn't disappear from the human story. For decades, the extinction of the Neanderthals was seen as a final chapter, abrupt, tragic, complete. They were assumed lost to time, overtaken by a more advanced species, us. But modern science has uncovered a twist no one expected. In the double helix of our own DNA lies a whisper from the Ice Age, a genetic echo of a people long gone. Thanks to breakthroughs in paleogenetics, we now know that almost all non-African humans alive today carry between 1–2% Neanderthal DNA. This discovery shattered the long-held belief that Neanderthals were a separate, inferior species. Instead, it revealed something astonishing. We didn't just replace Neanderthals, we carry them within us. This human-Neanderthal DNA link has redefined our understanding of what it means to be human. It's not just about ancestry or identity. These ancient genes influence real biological functions in our modern bodies. Immunity, fat storage, skin pigmentation, sleep cycles, even how we respond to sunlight. In a strange way, the secrets of Neanderthal DNA are still actively shaping who we are. They left behind more than stone tools and fossilized bones. They left behind instructions, adaptations, traces of survival strategies honed over hundreds of thousands of years. And yet, these fragments tell more than just a biological story. They hint at shared emotions, instincts, and struggles. They remind us that Neanderthals weren't a separate creature. They were kin. Their dreams, their fears, their genetic code all became part of us. In every breath we take, in every child born, there exists a faint pulse of the Ice Age. It's easy to think of the past as distant, that the Neanderthals were some alien predecessor with nothing in common. But the truth is far more profound and far more personal. When we ask, what were Neanderthals really like? We are also asking, who are we really? Because the Neanderthal didn't vanish completely, their story isn't over. It's carried forward, written into the blueprint of modern humanity. We are not just Homo sapiens. We are the living archive of ancient humans, a walking record of a species that once thrived, struggled, and blended into the tide of time. And in understanding the genes they left behind, we begin to understand ourselves. Roughly 50,000 years ago, the Earth was home to more than one kind of human. In the cold forests of Ice Age Europe, beneath starlit skies and beside ancient rivers, two branches of humanity finally crossed paths. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens in battle, not in conquest, but in proximity. These were not epic wars, but quiet encounters, overlapping realities, shared landscapes, and, at times, shared lives. The first meetings were likely cautious, marked by curiosity. What would it have been like to see another intelligent being different, yet strikingly familiar? With tools in hand, fire in their camps, language on their lips, these weren't monsters facing each other. They were two versions of humans staring across the evolutionary mirror. Archaeological evidence suggests that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens may have shared shelters, exchanged goods, and possibly learned from each other. Cave layers show overlapping habitation. Artifacts hint at technological crossover, and most compelling of our DNA confirms they mated. Though rare, interbreeding between the species did occur. These unions, brief and scattered, have left permanent marks in our genetic code. Embedded in modern humans are ancient human evolution, secrets inherited immunities, behavioral traits, and physical features carried silently for tens of thousands of years. But not every interaction was peaceful. Some may have ended in violence, driven by competition for food, territory, or fear of the unknown. As Homo sapiens spread rapidly from Africa into Eurasia, their growing numbers and social adaptability may have overwhelmed Neanderthal populations. Some scientists suggest that diseases carried by Homo sapiens pathogens to which Neanderthals had no defense may have played a devastating role. Others point to cultural differences, more complex symbolic thinking, faster innovation, or superior networking among Homo sapiens tribes. While Neanderthals had survived for hundreds of millennia, the arrival of a new human species may have disrupted the fragile balance that kept them alive in a brutal Ice Age world. It's possible that these encounters offered Neanderthals opportunities, new tools, new alliances, even new life. But it's just as possible that the encounter marked the beginning of their end. The tide had turned. A silent transition began, one species rising, another slowly fading. But the meeting wasn't meaningless. It reshaped humanity. It merged two stories into one, and it left behind clue-stone tools, bones, bloodlines that still whisper across the millennia. In the flickering firelight of prehistory, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens stood face to face not as predator and prey, but as kin. And in that encounter, something extraordinary happened. The future of humanity was forever changed. Say the word Neanderthal, and most people still conjure the same tired image, a hunched, snarling brute with club in hand and no language in his throat. It's a stereotype born not from science, but from ignorantian echo of 19th century prejudice that refuses to die. But in recent decades, archaeology has been quietly rewriting the narrative. Because what we've found in caves, bone beds, and tool caches tells a far more profound story, one of intelligence, compassion, and culture. This wasn't chaos. This was Neanderthal civilization. Neanderthals buried their dead, carefully, intentionally. Some graves show signs of red ochrean ancient pigment, often associated with symbolic meaning. Could this have been ritual, the beginnings of belief? We cannot say for certain, but the pattern is there. A gesture of respect, a whisper of ceremony, a glimpse of the sacred. They weren't just tool users, they were craftsmen. Flint blades napped with precision, hafted to wooden shafts using adhesives made from birch bark Terra process, requiring not just fire, but chemical understanding. Some even constructed shelters using mammoth bones and hides. They made and used pigment, perhaps for body decoration or artistic expression. And in one cave, a hollowed-out eagle talon, strung like a pendant, suggests adornment or identity. There are even theories still debated that they may have had rudimentary musical instruments, flutes made from the bones of birds. Did they sing, chant, hum lullabies to their children under ancient stars? The possibility is not fantasy, it is open inquiry. And there is something even more revealing, the evidence of empathy. Fossils of Neanderthals with broken limbs, arthritis, blindness, 7 severe disabilities, who lived long after their injuries, suggest something extraordinary. They were cared for, fed, protected, loved. These weren't acts of brute instinct. They were acts of community, of conscience, of emotion. Neanderthal social life was likely rich and nuanced. Group hunting strategies, the sharing of food, child-rearing, shelter building, it all required communication, memory, and cooperation. In short, humanity. Yes, their world was different from ours, colder, harsher, more immediate, but it was not less. It was fully human in a prehistoric context. And yet, for centuries, we've dismissed it, denied it, dehumanized them to elevate ourselves. But that denial is fading. With every new archaeological layer uncovered, with every bone examined, with every pigment trace detected, we are being asked to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Neanderthals were never the beasts we imagined. They were a people, a culture, a civilization in the shadows. And they deserve to be seen not as relics of failure, but as relatives who walked their own path through history, with courage, creativity, and care. And then quietly, without warning, they were gone. Roughly 40,000 years ago, the last known populations of Neanderthals disappeared from the archaeological record. No mass graves, no battlefields, no climactic ending written in fire and blood. Just absence, just silence. A species that had endured hundreds of millennia, weathering ice ages, surviving predators, crafting tools, raising children, simply vanished. This moment in prehistory remains one of our greatest unresolved questions. The Neanderthal extinction is a mystery that still haunts the halls of science. What happened to them? What forces could wipe out an entire species so deeply adapted to their world? There are theories, many in fact. Some point to climate change. Around the time Neanderthals vanished, Earth's weather patterns were shifting violently. The environment they had mastered for generations began to betray them. Forests turned to tundra. Familiar prey became scarce, and the Neanderthals, with their energy-hungry bodies and small populations, may have simply been outpaced by change. Others suspect disease. As Homo sapiens expanded into Neanderthal territory, they may have unknowingly brought pathogens, viruses, and bacteria for which Neanderthals had no immunity. It wouldn't have taken much. One outbreak, one village, one winter. Still others argue the extinction wasn't sudden at all, but gradual, that Neanderthals didn't disappear, they were absorbed. Through interbreeding and cultural exchange, they may have been genetically and socially folded into emerging Homo sapiens communities. In this view, it wasn't extinction, but transformation. A slow fading, not a sharp fall. This idea has gained traction in recent years. After all, as we've seen, most modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA. The mysterious disappearance of the Neanderthals may not have been mysterious at all. It may have been intimate, and yet something still feels lost. Their way of life, their songs, their myths, their face-assault have vanished from the earth. The fires that once lit their caves went out, and the stories passed around them faded into darkness. What remains are bones, tools, pigments, and whispers in our genome. But let us not reduce their end to tragedy alone. Let us not mourn what was lost without honoring what was lived. They thrived for longer than modern civilization has even existed. They endured extremes we can scarcely imagine. They laughed, they wept, they created, they adapted. And while their physical presence has vanished, their legacy has not. It lives in use in our blood, in our bones, in the quiet corners of our DNA. It lives in the drive to survive, to nurture, to create, to endure. The final chapter of the Neanderthals was not an erasure. It was a transformation. And the next chapter was us. They are gone but not forgotten, because echoes remain. Not in myths, but in matter, in our blood, in the cells that shape our skin, our immunity, our instincts, in dreams of firelit caves and ancient forests, in the quiet tug of fears we cannot explain. The lost Neanderthal knowledge is not lost, it's simply hidden, tucked away in genome sequences, in stone tools buried beneath the earth, in the quiet rhythm of our own biology. We carry them not as ghosts, but as ancestors. Their story is not one of failure. It is not the narrative of a species that couldn't keep up. It's a chapter in the grand epic of human evolution, a story of adaptation, strength, innovation, and survival. The Neanderthals helped shape who we are. Their strengths became our inheritance. Their extinction, our warning. If we listen, really listen, we can still hear their voices. In the wind, in our veins, in the questions science is only just beginning to ask. Because the past is not silent, and neither are they. They walk with use in shadow, in memory, and in DNA. Their truth was never lost. It was simply waiting to be found. Subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows for more cinematic, truth-revealing explorations into the mysteries of ancient human history and the secrets still buried within us.